Hi there, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about my thoughts so far on WWE 2K24. So I've had the game just over a week now, so I want to give my thoughts on a few of the game modes, the general gameplay, etc. I will precursor this by saying I haven't actually touched Universe mode or My Rise as of yet, partly because I'm planning to do a My Rise series on here, potentially. I'm also planning on doing a MyGM series, but we'll get to that later. In addition to that, let me know down in the comments below if there's any type of videos you want to see me do on WWE 2K24. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. I'm going to start briefly by mentioning the new match types that have been added to the game this year. We've got an ambulance match, a casket match, a special guest referee match, and a gauntlet match. What I'm going to do also is leave footage of these matches playing whilst I'm speaking, because I recorded my first time playing all of these matches. So I'm going to leave that playing in the background as I speak. But yeah, I would say the ambulance match is it's a good addition. Obviously, it's not something that we get very frequently in WWE, but it's a nice little addition to the game, bearing in mind it's been in older games, so it's nice to have it again. Casket match is a nice addition. Again, it's a bit similar to an ambulance match in the sense of what you do. Like, obviously you get the person in an ambulance or in a casket, and then you just basically play the submission mini game that you would do to shut the ambulance or shut the casket. With the special guest referee match, I think that is one that I think a lot of people were most excited for, and that was maybe the most requested match type to come this year. I just like the freedom you get with it, with having been able to switch from the ref mode or the superstar mode. With the gauntlet match, they've added 3 types. So you've got the normal gauntlet match, the gauntlet eliminator, and a gauntlet turmoil match. There is actually an achievement, which I'm going to leave on screen now, where you have to go through a 30-person turmoil gauntlet on legend difficulty. I think I'm going to give that a go on a video. Anyway, less about that, let's move on to MyGM now. Probably my favourite game mode for 3 years running now. It was nice to have the addition of 4 new general managers with Paul Heyman, Teddy Long, Ted DiBiase and William Regal. A nice little touch as well, I thought, was that the existing GMs had their power cards buffed, even if it was just instead of getting that power card once, you would get 2 per season as opposed to 1 last year and the year before. ECW being added as a brand you can manage is quite a nice touch, although I think it's sort of divided opinion that there's no women's champion on there. I don't know my history about ECW, but I'm assuming they didn't have a women's champion and that's why that isn't on there. Although in this day and age, I can totally see why people are a bit funny about that. I do think that slightly draws back from it though, because obviously it's nice to have the variety on your show, because that gives you better ratings as well. It gives you more bonuses for your match types and your star ratings and things like that when you have women's titles, because it's just a whole set of titles that you're completely missing from the show. So you've not only got your women's title, but you've got your tag titles as well, so that completely takes away from that. They've also added extreme difficulty this year, which I think is important, because I don't know about anybody else, but by, I'd say, August last year, I was on hard mode already on MyGM. I feel like it wasn't that difficult on 2K23 once you got used to it. The opening budget allowance for your drafts has been increased, so you can obviously get the same options as before, but they've also added 3.5 million for your drafts now, which is obviously good because it's more money to buy more people. There's also, right at the bottom of the screen, there's the match unlocks selection, and I feel like that adds a lot of progression to a save, because you can either start with all of them unlocked, or as I said with the progression thing, you can start with just a few match types and unlock them as you go along. I've not tried that myself personally yet, but I think I will at some point just to test it out. I would say the overall difficulty of MyGM mode as a whole, even on normal difficulty, even easy mode to some degree, I think it's harder this year, I'm finding anyway, to actually consistently book good shows and balance stamina, balance popularity, all of that, what you do in MyGM. I also think, as another side note, the morale of your superstars seems to shift quicker than usual. I feel like last year it was quite hard to get someone's morale to decrease really bad. If somebody asked for a title match and you said no, or they asked to be in a tag team match with a certain person and you said no, then that would obviously decrease their morale anyway. But I found I just didn't book Indy Hartwell for 2 weeks on a save and she just dropped morale, and I was like, One thing I am disappointed about with this year's MyGM though, amidst all of the good stuff, obviously all the new match types besides the gauntlet match have been added in there. Some of the results that you get from matches, so for example, like a backstage brawl match would give you an extra 10k fans. Some of those like rewards for completing matches have been shifted around this year. Like for example, like a casket match, the loser would leave your brand, but you'd gain 20,000 fans for booking a casket match. But one of the main things I am disappointed about is a lot of the promo skills on a lot of the superstars are exactly the same as last year's. Not that I think everybody should have had an increase or a decrease, like some people are fairly rated, but I do think there's a lot of unfair ratings in there, and I think you could debate this all day if you really wanted to. But I think it just disappoints me when you've got people like Trick Williams and Zoe Stark, who in the last year, I think it's safe to say, have upped their promo game. They have gotten better, but yet they sit on 2 promo skills. But then, for example, you've got 2 people from NXT called Duke Hudson and Brooks Jensen, who have both got 4 promo skills, when, with all due respect, they don't, to me anyway, they haven't proven to have 4 promo skills, which arguably, I know this is a game we're talking about, but it's basically saying that Brooks Jensen and Duke Hudson are doubly as good at promos than Trick Williams and Zoe Stark, and I just don't know about that. I'm so disappointed about it, to the point I've made 2 lists of people that are 2-star promos and people that are 4 stars, just so you can see how some of these are just wrong in my opinion. So for the list of people that are 2 stars, we've got Raquel Rodriguez, Chad Gable, Zoe Stark, Trick Williams, Chelsea Green, Elton Prince, Cora Jade, Gigi Dolin, Liv Morgan, Dijak and Drew Gulak. See, to me, all of them are at least 3. I don't think any of those people should be a 2. They should all be higher than that. And I know promo skill isn't the end of the world in a draft. Like, it's technically, it is more about your stamina, so you can book them more. It's more about your popularity, so they draw more people in, and your ring level. But I just find little touches like that frustrating, that all of these people over the last year have all upped their promo game, yet they all still sit on 2 promos. But just for comparison, here's a list of people with 4 promos. So as I mentioned before, Brooks Jensen and Duke Hudson, but you've also got Maxine Dupree, who has been a manager for most of the time she's been in the company. Ronda Rousey, who, no offense to Ronda Rousey, but towards the end of her run, she could not put a good promo together. Scarlett, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Now, I'm happy to say that Gargano and Ciampa, there's less dispute in there, but I think over the last year, I don't know. It's obviously not always their fault. They've not had chance to show it. Compared to some of the people that are in the list of 2 promos, I just feel like it's a little bit unfair. So now let's move on to showcase mode. So far, I've played 6 matches, so I've got up until the Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon match in 1994 at WrestleMania 10. I understand that this mode's not for everyone because of the constant switching between gameplay and the cinematics, but personally, I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I don't mind it at all. For me as well, it teaches history about the old classic matches that you always hear about, but like you've never actually watched. Like, I've got a subscription to the WWE Network, but I don't want to go back and watch 1,000 matches, you know? So otherwise I would never have like known these matches, but at least if it's not watching a full match, I'm getting a bit of an experience of that match through this mode. Another thing is, I think it is a bit strange that with showcase mode, or less so I mean with showcase mode, but with the supercharger for the game, you unlock all of the superstars and yeah, just all of the superstars with the supercharger, but you don't unlock the arenas. You still have to play through all of showcase mode to unlock the arenas, which I think is a bit strange because I feel like that was marketed as like, oh, it unlocks everything. But if you want all of the WrestleMania arenas over the years, obviously it's not every single one, but all the ones that are in the mode, you have to play through the whole mode. So to me, it partly felt like, well, if you're going to have something that's going to unlock all the superstars, it should have just unlocked everything like it said it would. Either that or just don't include showcase stuff in the supercharger at all, but maybe that's just me. Now let's move on to MyFaction. I think possibly the most controversial game mode. To start with, I think the new duplicates rewards are great because last year, for example, you could get like an amethyst card or a diamond card, but if you already had it as a duplicate, it would give you like 250 MyFaction points or something, which if you don't play MyFaction, that's basically nothing. So I think the fact that they've upped the MyFaction points gain for duplicates obviously the better the card is. I think that's a great addition. I think the ability to buy cards now on the pack market is really good. Obviously, we're yet to see if you're going to be able to buy like the promo cards, if you will. So like we've had like 2 so far. So you've had like the Legends pack, and then there's like it's called Heat. So they're not on the market as of the making of this video, but whether that comes in the future, I'm not sure. I think Persona cards are arguably the best addition to MyFaction this year. I think a lot of the issue that people had with MyFaction, myself included, was that you would get some exclusives on there, but then they would be locked behind MyFaction, so you couldn't play them like in normal exhibition mode. You couldn't take them into MyGM, your universe modes, etc. So for example, like on here, I have currently got the Persona cards, which are basically the antithesis to what I've just said. So you can bring them into the game this year outside of MyFaction. So for example, I've got a Sheamus model from 2009. If this was in last year's game, you would just have that for your MyFaction mode. You wouldn't be able to bring it. So I think that's probably the best addition this year, because I think that's going to give more people incentive to go and play MyFaction, to go and get these special editions, characters they already have, or potentially even in the future we might get new characters completely and then bring them into your base game. I can definitely say myself that I'll play a lot more MyFaction this year purely because of that, never mind the rest of the good additions to it. I like the addition of the free agents, although at the minute they've only been for like 3 matches as such, but I'm assuming there will be different variations of like the length of contracts and stuff, but I do like that. I don't know if this is just my Xbox or my game, but quick play seems to be broken at the minute. I tried to get into about 6 online games last night, and I would get like no more than 3-4 minutes into a match and it would just kick me out. And finally, for MyFaction, I think the new Faction Wars is great as well, because it feels like there's more progression to your Faction Wars as opposed to just playing against a random team of 4 people like it was last year. It feels like it has more of a purpose. So like I played my first Faction Wars boss last night, which is like your end goal as such, and it was against 4 types of John Cena's, which like made more sense than like last year you'd be put up against like Jey Uso, Ricochet, Braun Strowman and like Jinder Mahal, or just something completely random like that. Like it just didn't really make sense. You were purely just going for the wins to get new cards and get different rewards and stuff. But I like it this year because it feels like there's a lot more progression to it, and I think progression is so important in modes like this because that's what keeps people playing. Like last year, I think I got just over 100 Faction Wars wins, mainly for the achievement, if I'm honest, because I'm a bit of an achievement hunter. But after that, I had no incentive to carry on because it was just the same match over and over again, constant interruptions, etc. So yeah, I feel like MyFaction's done really well this year. Now finally, just to round it off, I'm going to talk about the overall gameplay. I think the new Irish Whip reversals are great because last year, if you reversed them, it would always just be an attack, but I like that you can do back and forth Irish Whips, which have always been a thing in wrestling as far as I'm concerned, but we just never had it in the game. I think generally matches just flow better. Like I think they seem more realistic, if you will. Obviously, you play in the game. I just think they seem to flow better, like with the amount of tags in tag matches and things like that. When 2 superstars collide, that seems to like just be programmed better this year, so that there's not as much, because there was this awkward collision that would always happen. It's still on this game, but like there would always be this awkward collision where people would just barge into each other and then they just sort of throw themselves back a bit, and like that happened so much in matches last year, I found, but I found it doesn't really happen a lot this year. I like the addition of the back and forth punching, the boo yay mini game. That's a nice little addition because again, it's something that's always been in wrestling but never been in the games. And honestly, just to top it off, I think this is arguably possibly the best addition this year. In terms of the small additions, I think this is the best addition of the year. How in tag matches of any number, they can only interfere to break up a pin or a submission once per teammate. Obviously, when people are tagged in and out, that resets. But I just think that is such an amazing addition because I don't know about other people last year, but every time you went to win a tag team match, you would always have to stun the other opponent, or you would just have to Irish whip them over the ropes and then pin the person you were pinning or submitting, etc. And it just didn't feel realistic playing any tag team match because you was constantly doing that. Whereas I think this year that is a fantastic addition, especially for Faction Wars as well. I would have loved this to have been in Faction Wars last year, and I feel like I would have played it a lot more purely just because of that. But yeah, it's a real shame that it wasn't in there previously. But I honestly think that is the best addition of the year for me. I just think it makes tag team matches so much more playable. enjoyable, whereas last year I would hate to play them because they was just constantly getting pins broken up. So overall then, I would give the game a solid 8 out of 10. I think it has definitely improved on last year. I think there's still things that could be added, especially to like your universe modes, where I've obviously not played that myself, as I said, but I know people have complained about there not being much addition to that. And I think with MyGM, I think the next step is like your 6-man matches, because we still don't have that in there. I'd also like a bit more of a shake up on the promo skills for MyGM next year, as I previously mentioned, or at least just the ability to edit that to how you see fit. Obviously I know some people would abuse it and make everybody 5 promo skills, but I just feel like for a more realistic save I would like to adjust those numbers myself, because I don't know about other people, but when I play MyGM I always use custom rosters because I always feel like some things are a bit off, like people's heel and face dynamics or their popularity might be a bit high or a bit low, so I always go in and make my own custom rosters based off of them things. I think if you liked WWE 2K23, you will like WWE 2K24. But yes, let me know down in the comments below what other videos you want me to make on this game, and any other game for that matter, but specifically for this game. Subscribe, leave a comment and like the video, it helps with all the engagement and all that stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching.